So we talked in our last video about what the Spanish found when they came into modern-day Mexico and New Mexico and ultimately up into California. But let's talk for a moment a little bit about their effort to convert the native groups to their faith, which is Catholicism, and how they go about doing that. On some level, sometimes they'll force the native people into practicing Catholicism, but sometimes, as in the case of the Church of San Jose in Laguna Pueblo, New Mexico, they do it in a much more subtle way. So I'm showing you the inside of this church, what's called the nave. The nave of a church is essentially the place where the congregation would gather. Here they would be seated in benches on either side. And as you can tell, it's a pretty simple structure. So it's basic, right? It's adobe, it's got walls and beams that go across. By the way, we refer to this type of very simple architecture as post and lintel. So the posts are these vertical beams that are supporting the ceiling, and the lintels are the pieces, the beams that you see exposed here, which are holding the building in place. Now, I also want you to notice that on the sides of the nave, they have painted these images that look like Native American pottery. And that is very much in an effort to make Native Americans feel comfortable, to make their culture and their artistic ideas feel appreciated, and create a space where they will be welcomed. So this is already kind of an effort to accommodate or to kind of bring Native American groups into this Catholic church. But what I want to show you is this thing that is behind the altar. So here's the altar in front of it, and behind it is this carved and painted wooden piece, which we call a retablo. So a retablo is just the piece behind the altar that's carved and wooden, usually fairly ornate and painted. Now the artist who creates it is unknown. It is probably a local artisans who showed artistic inclination, but not somebody who's formally trained and been to any kind of art school. But what's really interesting about this particular retablo is that we see a number of images that they're trying to use to make Catholicism more accessible and more relatable to Native American groups. So notice that a retablo is often divided into three parts. So you've got three figures going across, you have three figures up here. That is a reference to the Christian idea of the Holy Trinity. And the Holy Trinity, which is central to Christian beliefs, is that there is one God, so it's a monotheistic belief system, but that one God is present in three forms. In the figure of God the Father, the Son, who's Jesus, whose iconography, of course, is the cross, and the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit usually has a white dove, which you see right here, and that's the iconography of the Holy Spirit. Notice that they also have triangles above their heads. These act as kind of halos to represent their holiness, but also a triangle has 3 points, and that again is a reference to the notion of the Trinity. Now down here we've got a couple of key saints. At the center is Saint Joseph, on the left is Saint John, and on the right is the figure that I want to focus on, who is a very interesting female saint whose name is Saint Barbara. Now, Saint Barbara's story is that her father believed she was so precious that she had to be kept away from other people. So he locked her in a tower. This is her tower. That's her iconography. That's how I know that this figure is St. Barbara. Now, one day while her father was out, she decided that she wanted to meet and talk about Christianity, which was this brand new religion that she had just heard about. So these two missionaries came to visit her in her tower. She is very taken with their ideas. She decides to convert to Christianity. And before they leave, she says, hey, listen, you know, my tower, it only has 2 windows. And now that I'm a Christian, I think it should have 3 so that it symbolizes the Trinity. Could you help me build a 3rd window on my tower? And they do that. And kind of needless to say, when her father returns home and sees that there is a 3rd window in her tower, he's furious. And so he carts off his daughter, Barbara, and has her beheaded. She's put to death because, in part, she's converted to this new religion of Christianity. However, on her father's way back home, he is suddenly struck down by lightning. So Saint Barbara becomes the saint who you pray to for issues that deal with storms, thunder, lightning, and also sudden death. And what's very interesting here is that they have created this object that she holds, which is actually a symbol of the Pueblo deity of the horned water snake. It has these zigzagging lines. It's repeated up here at the top, where you've also got Native American symbols of the rainbow, the moon, and the sun. This zigzagging line tells us that this figure is the horned water snake. And that horned water snake has the same role as St. Barbara. It protects against thunder and lightning. So what the Spanish Catholics are saying is, hey, look, we've got this new religion, and don't worry, you don't have to give up all of your ideas about faith. We've got a saint that will do exactly the same thing as your horned water snake, and now you can pray to her. These are just two other, well, this is the detail of the St. Barbara I was just showing you, and this is another one that's a small carving where you can see that symbol she holds referencing the horned water snake and her tower that identifies her as St. Barbara. Now, needless to say, the Mission Church at Santa Barbara is named after St. Barbara. So is the city of Santa Barbara. And so it goes without saying that the central figure at the top of the exterior of the Mission Church in Santa Barbara is St. Barbara. Now, if I zoom in on her, you will notice that at the base, right there, is her tower. So the iconography is always present, and that helps us to identify her. Also at the top of this triangular pediment, we've got three figures who represent hope, faith, and charity, but that also may reference the Holy Trinity. And if you notice, this building is very symmetrical, and it has three columns on either side, which again reference the Holy Trinity. Now, we know that many of the missions, including Santa Barbara, were constructed by indigenous labor, but probably designed by the Spanish colonials. What we also know about the Mission Church at Santa Barbara is that in their library, they found architectural treatises that were written by the Roman architect Vitruvius, and his ideas about symmetry and balance and form seem to be the basis for this very well-designed, symmetrical, balanced building we know as Santa Barbara Mission. Now, inside of the Santa Barbara Mission, you've also got a retablo, which has three parts. And one interesting detail here is that although these artisans didn't have access or money to create something out of marble, it's always carved out of wood because it's accessible and affordable, they've created this effect so that these columns, which are in fact wood, look as though they're marble. And we have a term for this. When we have some sort of illusionistic painting that is so illusionistic that it actually makes you believe that it might actually be marble rather than wood, we call that trompe-l'oeil. And that is just a French word that literally means trick the eye. One of the best examples I've seen of that is this highly illusionistic painting done by an art teacher who wanted to prevent students from running down the hall. So the floor does not actually dip, it's only painted so that the illusion is created that the floor dips and you wouldn't want to run down it.